Welcome to Tales from the Bridge. My name is Tristan.
I'm James.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Ryan. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the 1985 Ron Howard classic, Cocoon.
We're also going to discuss a few honorable mentions, science fiction films that start with C, and we're going to do a little bit of trivia as well, too.
Nice.
Well, then let's make our way over to the bridge.
All right, before we get into Cocoon, let's talk about some other science fiction films
Yep.
that start with the letter C, because there's a handful out there. So what do you guys got? What films are worth mentioning?
Well, I would say Contact, the Jodie Foster, Matthew McConaughey, based on the Carl Sagan book. Really, for me, I really enjoyed that, and I had not seen a science fiction movie like that up until that point. A little bit slow in parts, but I thought they had really good chemistry, and the ending, left as many questions as it answered. But for me, totally enjoyable. Contact is a great movie.
I read the book that Carl Sagan wrote, and it was really good. And the film really follows it quite closely. So the book was great. And yeah, that's an unusually good film. There's not many films like that are in the present day real world and still science fiction.
Nice. Mine is not quite as nuanced. That's definitely on my list and was one of my favorites. But mine was Congo, actually. And only because we had the VHS when I was a kid and we had like maybe a dozen VHSs. And so it was just one that we watched a whole lot. And it was very funny. So Sherry and I, my sister, know it very well. And we forced my wife, Lindsay, to watch it like a year ago. And not pleased, I'll say that. But definitely a big part of my childhood. And yeah, anyway, it's a fun one.
That is good. And I remember watching that not too like a few years ago. It starts off really well and it's got a really Spielbergian feel. And then it
And
just
then it
kind of
just
loses
goes
itself.
right off the rails, right
Yeah,
off
and
the
then it's
rails.
gone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it starts
100%.
off yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
start. And
Yep. It's true.
Well, I'm surprised that I'm the one to pick this. I thought one of you would have got to my runner up first, but obviously, I think the rest of our listeners already know that Coneheads from 1993 with Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin is the only viable alternate to Cocoon for the letter C, and there's plenty of our listeners who agree with me on that one. A classic as we remember the crash landing of Beldar and Primat from the planet Remulac.
I liked every movie when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. When I saw Coneheads, I didn't like it. Like I didn't even like it when I was 10. I don't
Wow.
know.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
Come on, they even and the thing is, what I feel bad for is that um, the the woman who plays their daughter, right? Like Adam Sandler, Phil Hartman. This was like the SNL cast of like
Hmm.
of the early '90s, but the daughter of like Beldar and Primat, who's not listed in my thing here that I'm looking at, but I'm like, oh man, how you? She just her agent came to her with this and said, "We're gonna, you know, we get it. You're a model and an actress, but we're gonna put this prosthetic cone head on you for this role, and you've got to take it because it's Dan Aykroyd." And she was like, I need to do this, and so that conversation happened, and that makes it worth watching on its own just to see all of the actors who are tricked by their agents into doing this film, if for no other reason than we get to watch this and go, this could have been any of us.
I'm gonna toss out a couple C films that are maybe a little bit obscure. So listeners, if you haven't checked these out, or if you guys haven't checked these out, I recommend it. Cube. You guys remember Cube? I think it was a Canadian production, was it not?
It was actually, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe I didn't think of that movie. That
Yeah,
it's so good. And it's still
it's really
so
neat.
good, actually. It holds up. Yeah.
And it's a science fiction horror or thriller kind of thing. It's got some gore. But it's one of those, it's a puzzle film, and I like those when you don't know what's going on. So Cube,
And he's got
And
one of my favorite local Canadian performers, Julian Richings.
oh,
Um,
right.
he's one of
Which
the
I saw in a performance at Hasmarai that you were production manager for, I
yeah,
think,
yeah.
or
Noble
space manager for.
Parasites was the show.
Yeah,
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, not digress. Yeah.
very cool. And then Crimes of the Future by David Cronenberg. I love that. It's one of his more recent films. Viggo Mortensen. It's just great. I love that. The dark. Uh,
Didn't
uh,
see that one, Tristan. Where is it
what?
on the, scale of 1 to 10 on the Cronenberg scale? Where would you put that?
Eight or nine for me. It's an eight or
Hmm.
nine. I loved it. It's don't expect it to be exciting or take you anywhere that you haven't been after the first 20 minutes, but I really liked it. Speaking of weird, Color Out of Space with Nick Cage. That was a really weird one also. I think I like the weird ones.
Yeah, that was on my list. That's H.G. Lovecraft or H.P. Lovecraft
Yeah.
throwback, right? That was a short
Yep.
story. Yeah.
And then of course Chappie, which was okay. It looked really good. I was really excited for it. Kind of didn't add up at the end, but that's our buddy Neil Blomkamp who made that. That's I liked it. Looked great, but not totally fulfilling by the end. And then the last one I'll mention is Children of Men, which I thought was a very good film. I'd like to read the book by P.D. James. A little bit dark, but something about that film is it's got really long shots on the Steadicam and handheld, and the direction's really good.
Oh,
No,
that was good. That was
Children
good.
of Men's a great pick. Yeah, that's a really good film.
This episode, we are covering the movie, the letter C for the movies that we're going to be talking about. And it was my turn, and I picked Cocoon. For those of you who can look back, far back in your Ron Howard catalog at home, perhaps, it is hard to find. This movie is, we picked Cocoon this is a 1985. It's just kind of a fun film from my childhood that I just remember watching like a lot and remember very fondly. And 1985 was kind of a golden year for these kind of films. And it takes place near a retirement community. I believe it's in Florida. And aliens have returned to retrieve some of their stranded colleagues from back in the day where they had lived on Atlantis. And in the rescue operation, they buy a home with a pool, and they're keeping these cocoons in the pool and imbuing the pool with a sort of life force that is sort of able to make their stranded colleagues healthy enough for the trip back to I believe it's Antara, which is a very 80s alien name, like it's like, it's either going to start with a Z or it's going to be Antara, like, it's going to be one of those two, right? So anyways, this life force in the pool gets discovered by some retirees at a home nearby, and they come over where they sneak in for a swim, and they are sort of rejuvenated, and we get to see their path to discovering that there's aliens, and that they feel great all of a sudden. Their youth has returned. It's sort of a fountain of youth, and of course all goes awry as the rest of the retirement community discovers this pool, and they all jump in and to feel better. The aliens have to leave behind. Sorry for the spoilers here, but it was 1985, and the aliens have to leave their friends behind and hopefully return in the future, which they do in a sequel that was even more widely panned than this movie. But if you were maybe 12 years old in 1985, this was just a really sweet movie. It's like a low-key alien movie, and that's sort of what I liked about it. It's a subtle first contact with unlikely heroes and protagonists, and I think that's what drew me to it, and what sort of always kept it in my head as sort of a warm family movie too. And it's got that a bit of that same magic, and I think they're chasing that same magic that ET had, where you've got kids in a suburb discover an alien. And again, there's no big lasers. There's not a lot of special effects. There's just enough to make it kind of special. And although this movie comes nowhere close to ET, it captured a bit of just enough of that magic for me in the mid '80s to just completely capture. It was one of those movies that if it came up on pay TV, I would watch it. And I could just it was rewatchable for me, and it was a bit of a comfort watch, if anything. So I thought with the letter C, this would be a kind of a fun pick and a trip down the nostalgic lane. And curious to hear what the rest of you think about it.
I'm going to dive in, so to speak. There's my Cocoon pun for the show. I hadn't seen this movie until since the '80s, since it originally came out. So I had forgotten probably 99.9% of the plot points and everything about it, other than knowing Wilford Brimley was in it, the classic Wilford Brimley. But I had actually forgotten about all of the other classic actors. Like the cast list is truly impressive on this. Brian Dennehy and Steve Guttenberg in his heyday. That was amazing to see him as a young man. Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronin. I know a lot of our listeners may not even know who they are, but at one point they were huge, and huge Canadian actors as well too. And then of course Clint Howard shows up, Ron Howard's brother, who appears in most of his movies too. Um, like you, I felt it was very much a comfort watch, but it also had and I didn't know it was panned. I didn't look at any of the reviews. I didn't realize that didn't go down well. But I watched it with my kids as well too, my teen and preteen kids, and the best part for me was when the old folks at the retirement home started talking about their sex lives, and as their life force starts getting rejuvenated, they get a little frisky, and my kids are cringing and looking at me going, what is this movie even? So that was kind of enjoyable on that front. A teachable moment, so to speak, that stuff never really goes away completely, hopefully,
No,
just
no,
might take
making your
some.
kids cringe is always a pleasure. That's your job, frankly.
Totally, totally. Well, and usually I do it on my own. I don't need a movie to make that happen, but this was nice to have an external source of cringe. Yeah, and it's funny being a Ron Howard movie too. I always sort of associate a certain feel with Ron Howard movies. There's a certain texture to them, but this one it was interesting to see, and I don't know whether it was a symptom of the time or maybe budget, but this one almost felt like, and it was very early in his career, so it didn't have that same sort of polished touch, which was a bit unexpected for me. I sort of didn't imagine that would be the case, and you can almost see where he was sort of learning and growing to become the director that he became. It felt a little narratively slow, if you will, which maybe is intentional, mirroring the elder folks in the movie. But I couldn't help but think, if that movie was remade today, there would be a whole big subplot with, the daughter and the grandson, who, if you've seen the movie, you'll know that who I'm talking about, and they would be much bigger characters, and there would be a love interest for the daughter, and the old folks wouldn't be allowed to carry it the way they did in this time. But yeah, it was enjoyable. Was it something I'll be, looking to put in my catalog and rewatch over and over again? Probably not. I've never seen the sequel though, so I might have to get that somehow and have a watch and see how the whole story wraps up. But yeah, that's my initial take on it. That, good pick, enjoyable pick for, downing a bucket of popcorn and coming away feeling good, but not a life changer in any way.
I definitely came at it from slightly different because like I was telling you guys earlier, I had actually realized I never seen it. I had it conflated with something else in my head. I've seen a lot of Ron Howard classics. I've seen a lot of 80s sci-fi classics. I just assumed that I had watched this one. And so I think not having any history with it, it definitely it came out of nowhere. Like the feel, like I agree with many of the points about it being a bit of a slower narrative pace, and also just the idea of the subject matter being geriatric characters, in sort of an old folks home, and the idea that like the novelty, weirdly, the novelty of older characters in a later stage of their life being able to carry a full narrative is not something you see in anything really. Like, and to that end, I actually thought, as much as yeah, when they go for their first swim and they're really energized and they have that little chat on the way back, there's that little bit of like, oh yeah, okay, well, I guess we're, talking about old folks feeling horny, and there's that. But then there was also this part of me who was like, but of course, it's like it's the human condition. There's still people, as you age, it's still part of life. And there's that was the part that for me actually, like, I really kind of loved, that was the idea of like treating these people as characters and full people. And just because, I don't know, our society, even still, right, when people get to near the end of their life, we start to sort of write them off, right? Oh, they've done everything they can do. They're now just in this home, and they take their little dance classes and they eat their pudding, and we can just forget about them, right? And how these characters in particular were like, no, like we still have so much to do and so much to live for, and how like beautiful that is, really. And the idea that they were able to get that chance through this magical pool, right? But also then you had the different narratives, right? You had the three that were really into it, but then you had it was Jack Guilford's character who was not really up for it, right? He was like, no, me and my wife are fine. We were comfortable where we are. We're in our place, right? And so it was also the different viewpoints of how people deal with that end of life and what that means to them, and how some people do want more, but some people are comfortable where they're at, and what that means to everybody is different, and it's all valid too, right? So yeah, I just yeah, that was what kind of popped out to me in general. Like there was so many things to talk about in the movie, but just that idea of treating these characters that are nearing the end of their lives as still living their lives, and not it just being like a final chapter, I thought was very cool, and just like something that felt new, even though it's from 1985, and something that like you don't see that now. Like you don't see people writing about that now really at all, and I don't know why. But yeah, anyway, that was sort of my first takeaway.
Yeah, also my first time watching this was when Sam recommended it, but I had seen Cocoon: The Return many times because it was on TV when I was a kid, and I remember recording it and pressing pause on the VCR to stop the commercials, or to cut out the commercials. So I'd seen two multiple times and liked it when I was a kid, and just never really had the draw to watch that old people sci-fi film. So it was great to hear Sam was recommending this, because when I watched it, it was like what I'd never seen it before, but it felt like a movie I'd seen before because it was 1985. It was familiar faces. Uh, it was made by Ron Howard, and it just had my childhood wrapped inside this film a little bit, even though it's about old people. I'll say I think this is the cutest science fiction movie ever made. Like it's got to be. Like I can't. What is cuter than these old people kind of discovering themselves? Like it's a coming of age story in many ways too for these 60, 70 plus year olds. However, Wilfred Brimley was only 49 when they started to film it, so they had to make him look a little bit old. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
So
I had there has been some internet sort of traffic about like what Wilford
yeah.
Brimley looked at like at 50 versus people nowadays, and I kind of wonder. I feel like I think Wilfred had some fun years, maybe in his 20s and
Oh
30s.
yeah.
I feel like he lived a little.
Well, I would also say this is Wilfred's second best science fiction film. What's his first? Come on, guys. He would have been about 3 years younger, 46, 47.
No idea. Can't place it.
Not a main star, but a character. The Thing. That's one of my favorites,
Oh,
but Wilfred
Right.
was a I forget his character name in that
I think
now.
he was
But
Dr. Bale, Dr.
Dale, yeah. He was
Yeah,
the doctor, yeah.
he was the
But
doctor. Yeah. Oh man,
that's one of my favorites. So
good
I look
pull.
forward to getting to the letter T, and maybe that one will come up. Yeah, I think the reviews were kind of up and down, like you said, James, on this one. However, at the box office, it did well. It made like 80 or 90 million dollars, and it was made for 17 million dollars. So that's a successful film. They did do a sequel, you know. So there was a demand. It was somewhat popular. I did read that it was the sixth highest grossing film of the year. So it did come out the same summer as Back to the Future. And just to add a little tidbit for you guys, Robert Zemeckis was supposed to be the director of Cocoon. He had two used cars and another film that wasn't. They were both bombs. I guess he was going to make Cocoon, and then he made Romancing the Stone. Was it Romancing the Stone first? Yeah, or Jewel of the Nile. One of Romancing the Stone, I think, came first. He did that, and then it was successful at the box office, but the studio didn't like it when before it released in the theater, so they said, "Get rid of this Zemeckis guy, give it to Ron Howard, let him take this one on," and that's how Ron Howard got it. And then at the same time, Robert Zemeckis made and filmed Back to the Future, which was the biggest movie of the summer in 1985. But what a great couple of years of film. Those early mid 80s are just like, just think of those movies. They all work together. They go hand in hand. So I really liked Cocoon. It has not only is it one of the cutest, if it is the cutest science fiction movie I've ever seen. It also has one of the best montages. Like remember when you get that 80s music and the old people go dancing at night and they're like doing flips and it shows them swimming and all like just everything is just like it's
In the
so
80s,
funny.
sorry to interrupt, but like the 80s nightclub scene, right?
Yeah.
Like the any kind of eight, it's like, yeah. And there's always a solo at some point.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it's
Yeah.
they just don't club like that anymore.
Yeah, the 80s and the saxophone thing, it's weird, eh? It's like if you
Yeah.
listen to so many, like, and it's funny. The other day, I heard a song by the Eurythmics that I hadn't heard in years and years and years, but great song though, called "Thorn in My Side," if you remember that song. And I was listening to it and reliving all the great memories, and then suddenly the saxophone was there again, and it's like, where did that come from? And I was like, oh yes, the '80s. But yeah, it was a thing.
So yeah, Cocoon is awesome. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. I think it's pretty hard to find. You'll have to be savvy. We'll just say that. Or get a VCR. Go find a copy of it on VHS. That's the best way to watch it.
Or support your local public library. That's where I found my copy.
Oh,
Oh, no
excellent.
kidding.
A
Hmm.
DVD
A
or Blu-ray?
DVD. DVD.
Okay.
Yeah. So you gotta go back in the tech a little bit, but yep, DVD copy.
Nice. I did
Thank you,
hear,
Guelph Public Library.
yeah. No, they're pretty good there. And yeah, put those libraries to use. So watch Cocoon, go to the library, go dancing at a nightclub, go swimming in your neighbor's pool, go find out what Steve Gutenberg's up to. Just do all of it.
What is Steve Gutenberg up to? What happened to Steve Gutenberg? He had a moment.
I see him now and then as I doom scroll through our modern world online, he pops up with these little inspirational reels on the social medias, and he comes up and it just, hey, it's me, Steve, and just want to tell you, it's a beautiful day and you should make the most of it and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's amazing because you're right, he did kind of disappear for a while, but now he's back, at least in that capacity. So
Yeah, he's probably doing that in between cameos.
Oh, Cameo,
The app. Yeah.
the app thing.
He's definitely wishing like someone's dad a happy birthday right
Mhm.
now. Guaranteed. Yeah.
It's also just worth mentioning too, Barrett Oliver was the young boy in
Uh-huh.
the film, and he didn't have a big role in the film, right? He's not in it too much, but he's Wilford Brimley's grandson. So it was neat to see him in there. He hasn't done it. I think he's straight out of the film industry shortly after Cocoon as well. He wasn't in much after that.
He's got a very different vibe now. Yeah. Just go ahead and Google yourself a little bit of Barrett Oliver. It's a different dude.
really,
He's a different dude.
oh.
He yeah. Well that's what I'll say about Barrett Oliver for sure.
On the science fiction tangent tip for this, I don't know if you guys noticed this as well too, but right during the big climactic chase scene at the end as well too, which was a little bit drawn out and a little wanting on special effects budget, I think, but Tell me if you noticed the same thing when during the score for this film was written by James Horner, who was a really prominent and really brilliant composer for film music. But there was a piece of music that came on, and I remember it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I looked at my wife, and she wouldn't know, so I don't know why I looked at her, but there was a piece of music, and if you look it up now on Spotify or your streamer of choice, called The Chase. And I could have sworn that this piece of music was lifted directly from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. It had
It
all those
was.
same,
It was.
well, I don't know if it was a direct lift because I've gone back and I've
It was tweaked a little bit, but James did that to fill some music for Cocoon.
that's well, and that's in doing a little reading after the fact. I learned that he was kind of, I don't know if guilty is the word that you want to use, but that was a bit of a hallmark that he would borrow from himself and reuse themes and certain sounds and compositions. So I guess if you're doing it from yourself, it's not really stealing, but I thought that was an interesting thing. But then it made me go back and listen to the soundtrack for Star Trek 2, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
But then the other thing, if you stay and watch the credits, I saw that Ralph McQuarrie was the conceptual designer for this movie too. And those of us who are in the know that he was the artist and conceptual designer for so many of our big movies too, like Star Wars and gosh, so many. All the Star Wars movies, I think Star Trek, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I think maybe Indiana Jones. Kind of a design god, a sci-fi god, as far as I'm concerned. So that was kind of neat to see his name pop up there as well.
And just to also uh, go to the special effects here, Cocoon won the Academy Award for Best Special Effects.
Really?
Yeah, it really did.
E- Even
Just picture
above,
those aliens, look at those aliens and how they float around the swimming pool. It won Best Special Effects.
wow. Well, even the aliens, the reveal of the aliens with their glowing bodies, I thought was kind of artfully done when it first hit the screen. But then, yeah, the floating was a little suspect, and then and the final reveal of the or the I don't want to give away the ending too much, more than we already have, but yeah, I'm surprised at that. I mean, kudos to them, but if Back to the Future was that year as well, then that should have given it a run for its money, I think.
I'm glad it went over well. When I put this out there, I was like, I feel like this might be a bit hit and miss. So yeah, I'm
No, good
pleasantly
pick.
surprised that you guys
Yeah.
enjoyed it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, if anyone really hates this movie, shame on you. Like, come on. It's so sweet. It's so cute.
Gr-
It's a gentle
Grow a
film. Just,
heart.
yeah, come on.
Yes.
All
Is
right.
it
The
the
only
greatest film? No. Is it the most entertaining and is it just a phenomenal film? No. But come on. It's great. It's fine. Great pick, Sam.
Yeah.
Good
Hey,
one.
good. Hey, so what's next?
It's James's pick.
The next episode will be brought to you by the letter D and the movie not Dune, but Donnie Darko, which is
Oh,
another movie that I have
interesting.
actually never seen. It's one of those ones I've seen on lists and at the video store back in the day and thought, oh man, I should see that. It looks kind of up my alley, but never have gotten around to it. But as I was perusing uh, the web pages to see the sci-fi and fantasy movies that start with D, that one just kind of jumped out at me, and I thought it's 2001. Jake Gyllenhaal starring, and yeah, Donnie Darko is the movie we're going to watch for the next episode.
interesting choice, James.
That's
I
a
wouldn't have never guessed that.
Sorry for those of you who wanted one of the Dune iterations,
Oh,
but
well, we've made it into the 21st century just
that's
23
awesome.
years ago.
yeah,
Oh,
painful.
great.
That's
Great
cool.
pick.
Should we
All
do
right.
some trivia?
Yeah, what do you got there, Ryan? You got any trivia for us?
I guess the first one I could throw out there is one of the main actors was a Golden Glove boxer who actually only had sight in one eye when they filmed this movie. Do you know who that is?
Is it Hume or Doom? What's his name?
It was Hume. Yeah,
Hume.
it was. And in the scene actually where he hits that orderly, um, he actually did knock him out. He was supposed to fake it,
Wow.
but he's got no depth perception because he only had one eye, and he literally knocked that young kid out actually right on the set. Yeah.
I wonder if you get any, as an extra on set, if you get knocked out by one of the stars, do you get any bonus for that? Is that
Oh,
I
I'm
don't
sure they
know.
all signed waivers. The studio's got their butts covered, guaranteed.
Yeah.
You get a good story.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, you got knocked
Yeah.
out by Hume Cronin. That's amazing.
A
It's
Yeah.
like,
75-year-old
Worth it in
man.
itself. Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Well, hey, you know what? He obviously still brought the heat. Like that was
Mhm.
one of the performers, one of the main performers actually took the gig for less than their usual fee just to work with Ron Howard. Based on their age and where they were in their career, can you guess who that might have been?
I'm going to say probably Don Amici because he was a bit of a legend by that point, wasn't he?
No, it was actually Gutenberg
Oh,
because he was rising, but he wasn't, he wasn't full Gutenberg at that point, and he just to work with Ron, he took considerably less actually, and considerably less than almost everyone else that had as much screen time as him as well. So
Hmm.
kind of cool. Just also showed what sort of clout Howard had already, right?
Well, you knew that Brian Dennehy wasn't taking a cut.
No,
Like,
no, he certainly was not. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
true. I feel about Brian Dennehy the same way the last time when we talked about Blade Runner. Like I feel like his acting style to me is very similar to Harrison Ford's acting style, where the man just shows up, he says the lines that he's paid to say, and people are like, "Thanks, Brian," and he takes his paycheck and he goes home.
he's naming his own price. It's like, no, you're gonna give me this much. No,
Yeah.
but we've got a deal here. I see that, but you're gonna give me this much money. And you
He's
do.
one of those guys too
Yeah.
that when he plays the good guy, you like him. When he plays the bad guy, you hate him. Like he can
Yeah.
do both really well.
Yeah, no, it's
And he
true.
doesn't
always
change
brings
his
that.
acting too much. It's very subtle.
Yeah.
Like just think of him in First Blood. You just hate him. You want him to go down. And his
But then
acting.
in this, when he's like speaking to them so sympathetically, right? There's something so
Yeah.
comforting about his mannerisms, and you
Yeah.
just buy it. Yeah, you believe that he's not there to do them any harm, even though right off the bat, like, why would you ever believe that? Yeah. No, it's
I've
true.
got one for you guys. There's only one other actor that I can find on the internet that they were considering and wanted to play Steve Gutenberg's role. Who was that actor? There's probably a few that they were considering, but there's only one online that I could find out that got close to getting the part, and he wasn't very well known yet.
was it Tom Cruise?
No, it was Nicolas Cage.
Oh no way!
Wow.
That would have been a very different vibe
Yeah.
for the boat captain.
But they kind of have the same hyperactive kind of
I just
thing
don't
going
think,
on a little bit,
but I never would have bought him, like, because Gutenberg does that nice middle ground where like he's kind of a dork.
yeah, when Gutenberg wanted to have sex with the alien, it was like, okay. If Nick Cage did, it would have been like, woo.
A little
Bit too
creepy,
much
maybe. Yeah.
Who's
No.
the alien?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but when he says, "May the force be with you," I'm just like, oh man, what a dork. That's the best. Such a great line from Gutenberg.
Thank you for joining us today. Donnie Darko's next for the movie. Well, I haven't seen that in years. That'll be interesting to revisit. Next episode is going to be a book club episode where we're talking about The Mercy of Gods. Join us for that one. More interviews with great authors and guests coming up. Thank you again for joining us. Until next time.